Everyone in the garage laughed when 16-year-old Sarah walked in wearing worn boots and holding a rusty wrench. The owner, Mike Thompson, dared her to fix an engine his top mechanics had declared hopeless. Cameras rolled, expecting a disaster, but what Sarah did next turned the room silent. What she revealed about who trained her left grown men speechless. No one saw it coming. What was hidden behind her calm eyes would change everything, and it all started here. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now let's begin. Sarah stepped into Thompson's auto repair just before noon, her boots coated in dust from the long walk down the highway. She was only 16, but there was something unshakable about the way she moved, as if the grease on her hands carried more knowledge than half the crew combined. The garage buzzed with activity until one by one heads turned. A few mechanics chuckled. One whispered, "Whose kid is that?" Another said, "Wrong place, sweetheart." Mike Thompson, the garage owner, emerged from his office holding a clipboard. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with oil-stained jeans and a firm voice that carried weight across the Texas heat. He raised an eyebrow at the sight of the girl. "Can I help you?" he asked with a smirk, expecting her to ask for directions or sell something. "I heard you had an engine no one could fix," Sarah replied calmly. Her voice was clear, strong, and unwavering. That stopped Mike dead in his tracks. He glanced at his head mechanic, Tony, who rolled his eyes and leaned against the hood of a rusted-out pickup truck. "Kid, this is not a toy store," Tony said. "This engine is toast. The ECU is fried, timing is off, compression is dead. Even NASA could not restart this thing." Sarah stepped closer, her boots clicking against the concrete floor. "Let me take a look." Mike crossed his arms, intrigued by the boldness. The entire garage had gone quiet now. Every wrench had stopped turning. Every conversation had died. "You know what? Fine. Let us have some fun. You fix this engine and I will pay you $500. You mess it up, you clean the garage for a week. Deal." Every mechanic in the garage turned to watch. Phones came out. Some started recording. The air grew thick with anticipation and barely concealed amusement. Sarah nodded once. "Deal." She dropped her backpack, pulled her long hair into a tight ponytail, and climbed into the engine bay without hesitation. The room went dead silent except for the clicking of sockets and the hum of Sarah's focus. She worked with precision that defied her age, not wasting a single motion. Within minutes, she bypassed a faulty sensor, realigned the crankshaft manually, and rewired a section of corroded harness using nothing but a multi-tool and a soldering pen from her bag. Mike watched, his amusement slowly fading into disbelief. Tony leaned in closer, his face twisted in confusion. "How did she know to reset the fuel map manually?" he whispered to another mechanic, his voice barely audible above the Texas afternoon heat that seemed to press against the garage walls. Sarah kept going, never looking up. Every move was confident, every decision sharp. 30 minutes later, she stepped back, wiped her hands on a rag and said, "Try it now." Mike turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared to life with a power that shook the building. Then came the silence. Absolute, deafening silence. 20 grown men stood frozen, their jaws slack, their pride deflating with every smooth purr of the engine that had been declared dead just an hour ago. Tony scratched his head, eyes darting between Sarah and the engine like he had just witnessed a miracle. "Who is your father?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah glanced at the floor for a moment, then straightened her shoulders. "My dad was Robert Mitchell," she said quietly. The name dropped like a thunderbolt in the Texas heat. A stunned hush followed that seemed to stretch for eternity. Tony stepped back slowly, his face going pale. Mike's eyes widened like he had seen a ghost. "Robert Mitchell?" he repeated as if he could not believe the words coming from his own mouth. Sarah nodded once. "He taught me everything before he passed away." Mike leaned against the workbench, his mind reeling. Robert Mitchell was not just a mechanic. He was a legend known across the entire state of Texas for building custom engines that outran Ferraris and outlasted military tanks. He had worked on engines for NASCAR teams, high-end restorations, and even military contracts. His skills had become myth after he suddenly disappeared from the scene years ago. No one had heard much since, and now his daughter had just walked into Mike's garage and resurrected a junkyard relic like it was second nature. Why did you not tell me who you were? Mike asked, still processing the moment, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. Because I wanted to see how people treated someone with no name, Sarah replied, her voice firm but not bitter. I wanted to earn it. That line cut through the room like a blade through the thick Texas air. Some of the younger mechanics shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their phones. No one was laughing anymore. Sarah picked up her backpack, but before she could leave, Mike stopped her. Wait, he said. I owe you $500. He pulled a wad of cash from his back pocket and counted it out slowly, as if paying her made everything more real. Sarah took it politely, but her expression did not change. I am not here for money, she said. I came because this garage used to mean something. My dad worked here before he opened his own shop. He told me stories about how this place used to be about passion, not pride. Mike's face darkened. That was a long time ago. Sarah stared at him, her eyes sharp as the Texas sun cutting through storm clouds. Then maybe it is time to bring that back. These words hit deeper than anyone expected. Tony folded his arms, glancing at the younger crew. They looked shaken, some even embarrassed. The mood in the room had shifted entirely, like someone had pulled the curtain back and revealed something raw underneath. Before Sarah could step out the door, a loud voice interrupted. Wait, before you go, can you help me? It was Jason, one of the youngest apprentices, barely 18, wide-eyed and clearly inspired. Sarah turned. With what? Civic, he said nervously. It has been misfiring for weeks. No one can figure it out. Mike opened his mouth to say something but stopped himself. Sarah walked back in without a word, heading toward the corner of the garage where the Civic sat. This time no one laughed. Something had begun, and none of them knew just how deep Sarah's connection to the past and the truth about her father would go. The Civic sat quietly under the flickering garage lights. Its hood already opened like it was waiting for someone to finally understand it. Jason stood beside it, nervous, wiping his hands on his jeans as Sarah approached. Everyone else stayed back, watching silently, not wanting to interrupt what felt like something sacred. Even Mike, who had run this shop for over 20 years, did not dare speak. Sarah did not hesitate. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small leather pouch, old, worn, and clearly valuable. She unzipped it carefully to reveal a collection of vintage precision tools, some engraved with the initials RM. Each one had the shine of decades of care, but more importantly they held stories. Stories of late nights in oil-stained overalls, engines roaring back to life under the hands of a legend. Jason leaned closer. Are those your dad's? Sarah nodded. He gave them to me the day I rebuilt my first transmission. I was 12. The group stirred. Even Tony raised his eyebrows. She ran her fingers along the edge of the engine like she was reading it. Then she closed her eyes for a second, listening, not just to the metal but to the echoes of lessons, the sound of her father's voice in her memory. Start it up, she said. Jason climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine sputtered, hesitated, then stumbled into a rough idle, shaking like it had no rhythm left in it. Sarah listened closely, then she motioned for him to cut it. Misfire is not just mechanical, she said, stepping in. It is emotional. Engines speak if you listen. Mike scoffed slightly, but the others leaned in closer. Sarah checked the plugs, tightened the coils, then reached behind the intake manifold. Her hand found a broken vacuum hose. She did not celebrate, she just nodded to herself, replaced it with a spare from her pouch and adjusted the throttle body. Try it again, she said. Jason did. The Civic roared to life, smooth, clean, almost too perfect. The look on Jason's face was one of pure awe. How did you know? Sarah looked at him seriously. Because that sound, that specific uneven rumble followed by a dip, it is what my dad called the heartbeat misfire. He said, you feel it in your bones before you even see it. The garage fell into silence again, but this time it was filled with respect. Tony stepped forward, scratching his head. That was unbelievable. Mike, still near the back, seemed torn, like something inside him wanted to admit that what he had just witnessed was beyond him. But pride was not an easy thing to let go of. Sarah packed her tools quietly, but her eyes scanned the room. This place is filled with good people, she said, but your pride is getting in your way. You are afraid of being wrong. That hit hard. Tony nodded slowly. Jason stepped forward again. Can you teach us? The words hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Sarah did not smile, but something in her eyes softened. I can share what I know, but it is not just about fixing things, she said. It is about listening, respecting the machine, respecting each other. That is what my dad believed. A long silence followed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mike finally spoke. You said your dad used to work here, he said, voice low. He was a good man, taught me everything I knew. Then he left, opened his shop, never looked back. Sarah turned to him. He left because he wanted more. He believed this place could be great, but he felt ignored. He was tired of being talked over. Mike stared at the floor. The others looked at him, unsure what he would say next. Then he said something no one expected. Maybe it is time we start listening again. In that moment, the garage shifted, not just in atmosphere but in purpose. The next morning, the garage looked different, not physically but in energy. Something had changed overnight. The mechanics arrived earlier than usual. Even Tony, who always dragged his feet in late with a breakfast burrito and excuses, walked in with gloves already on. The old Civic stood at the center like a monument, not just a car but a symbol of something they had nearly lost: pride in their craft. Sarah was already there, wearing the same hoodie and jeans, her hair tied back tightly. She was wiping down a set of wrenches, laying them out with precision that made even the veterans feel like they had something to learn. No one laughed at her anymore. They watched her, they listened. Mike came in last. His face was unreadable, but his posture had softened. For the first time in years, he was not barking orders or criticizing. He walked over to Sarah, paused, then handed her a mug of coffee. Black, no sugar, right? She looked at him. That is right. It was a small gesture, but in that world it meant everything. By noon, the shop had turned into something between a classroom and a pit crew. Sarah stood over the hood of a Mustang with Jason, showing him how to calibrate the idle air control valve. She did not just tell him what to do, she explained the why. Every part, every sound, every movement had meaning. Feel that? She asked as the engine smoothed out. That is the car saying thank you. Jason smiled wide. You talk like cars are alive. Sarah did not hesitate. They are, just not in the way most people understand. In the corner, Tony watched silently. Then he picked up a torque wrench, walked over and asked, What are you doing after this? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Why? Because there is an old Camaro in Bay 3 that has been mocking me for a week. I think it respects you more than it respects me. That got a rare laugh out of her. She followed him, and together they opened the hood. Meanwhile, Mike stepped into his office and closed the door behind him. The blinds were open so he could still see everything. He watched as his team, his once disjointed, prideful, disconnected team, worked together. It was not just about fixing cars anymore. It was about rebuilding trust, and it had started with a girl no one wanted to listen to. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo. 3 men in overalls, grease-stained and smiling. One of them was Sarah's father, Robert Mitchell, the man who taught him everything, the man he had once called brother, the man he had let down. Mike stared at the photo, then picked up the phone and made a call. Hello, a voice answered. It's Mike. I need to talk to you about your daughter. Outside, Sarah finished with the Camaro. She wiped her hands, looked around, and saw what was forming. A family, one bolt at a time. Just then, a sleek black Escalade pulled into the lot. Feel that? She asked as the engine smoothed out. That is the car saying thank you. Jason smiled wide. You talk like cars are alive. Sarah did not hesitate. They are, just not in the way most people understand. In the corner, Tony watched silently. Then he picked up a torque wrench, walked over and asked, What are you doing after this? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Why? Because there is an old Camaro in Bay 3 that has been mocking me for a week. I think it respects you more than it respects me. That got a rare laugh out of her. She followed him, and together they opened the hood. Meanwhile, Mike stepped into his office and closed the door behind him. The blinds were open so he could still see everything. He watched as his team, his once disjointed, prideful, disconnected team, worked together. It was not just about fixing cars anymore. It was about rebuilding trust, and it had started with a girl no one wanted to listen to. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo. 3 men in overalls, grease-stained and smiling. One of them was Sarah's father, Robert Mitchell, the man who taught him everything, the man he had once called brother, the man he had let down. Mike stared at the photo, then picked up the phone and made a call. "Hello," a voice answered. "It's Mike. I need to talk to you about your daughter." Outside, Sarah finished with the Camaro. She wiped her hands, looked around, and saw what was forming. A family, one bolt at a time. Just then, a sleek black Escalade pulled into the lot. It was clean, expensive, and out of place. The kind of vehicle that turned heads because it did not belong in a place like this. The door opened and a tall man in a sharp gray suit stepped out, sunglasses hiding his eyes. His shoes were polished, his walk steady and confident. He moved like someone who owned buildings, not just cars. But when he looked at Sarah, his expression changed. "Sarah Mitchell?" She tensed. "Yes." The man removed his glasses. "I am Daniel Morrison, Chief Executive Officer of Morrison Motors. Your father saved my life 15 years ago. I heard what you did yesterday." The entire garage fell silent. Daniel stepped forward. "I want to talk business and I want to talk now." The office door closed behind Sarah with a soft click, but inside the air was heavy. Daniel Morrison sat across the desk, calm but deliberate, his movements sharp like the edge of a freshly cut gear. "I have followed your journey from the moment I got the call. You resurrected a dead car, united a broken team, and rebuilt trust in a shop where it was nearly extinct. That is not just impressive, that is rare." Sarah stayed quiet. Daniel smiled. "I am not here for compliments, I am here for opportunity. I am opening a new division, an elite performance and innovation unit. I want you to lead it." Sarah blinked. "Lead it?" "Yes, you would be the youngest project director in Morrison Motors history. You choose your team, your shop, your vision." The offer hung in the air. "What about this garage? What about Mike and the others?" Daniel nodded. "You can turn this place into the first official Morrison innovation satellite. You make the calls, I just provide the tools." Sarah took a deep breath. "I will do it, but on my terms. No suits walking in and treating these guys like background noise. The shop lives and breathes because of them. You mess with that and I walk." Daniel turned, a rare grin touching his lips. "Deal." Word spread like wildfire. The next day, new tools arrived, branded gear, state-of-the-art systems. But what mattered more was the change in energy. Sarah now stood at the head of something that was no longer broken but reborn. Customers poured in not because of flashy ads but because word traveled. There was something different happening at that garage. Mechanics who respected each other, a young woman who knew engines better than anyone, and a team that operated like a heartbeat, strong, steady, and impossible to stop. 3 weeks later, a man walked in wearing an old leather jacket and a crooked smile. He looked around, eyes landing on Sarah. "You look like your father," he said. "He once fixed my car in the middle of a snowstorm without asking for $1. Sarah smiled. "That sounds like him." The man nodded. "He was a good man, and now you are carrying that torch." Later that night, after the shop closed, Sarah stood outside staring at the stars. Her mind full but her heart still. Mike walked up beside her. "Your dad would be proud," he said. Sarah whispered, "I hope so." Mike handed her a box. Inside was her father's old name patch, Mitchell, still stained with oil. "Put it up," he said, right above the new sign. The next morning, the garage had a new name. Mitchell Performance Garage, in honor of the past, built for the future. It was more than a business. It was a legacy, and it all started here. Started because one girl refused to be ignored. Later that night, after the shop closed, Sarah stood outside staring at the stars. Her mind full but her heart still. Mike walked up beside her. "Your dad would be proud," he said. Sarah whispered, "I hope so." Mike handed her a box. Inside was her father's old name patch, Mitchell, still stained with oil. "Put it up," he said, right above the new sign. The next morning, the garage had a new name. Mitchell Performance Garage, in honor of the past, built for the future. It was more than a business. It was a legacy, and it all started here. Started because one girl refused to be ignored. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories.